Almost half of all Americans say they feel sleepy during the day between 3 and 7 days per week. Between 10 to 30% of adults struggle with chronic insomnia. The difference between an exhausted, irritable, and angry you and a happy you sometimes comes down to just how good your sleep is. So the question is, how do you go from not sleeping well and being exhausted to sleeping your best? In this episode, we are joined with Amer Khan, founder of Sehatu, and a veteran and board certified sleep doctor. We will hear about best sleep strategies, how to deal with anxiety and stress that's affecting your sleep, even what to do if you keep waking up at 3 a.m. in the morning. Tons in this episode. If you like this, please subscribe because we're making new episodes every week. Let's stay curious and learn about Amer and how to sleep well. And then you started playing with the idea of pediatric neurology. And so that's where we're at, where you realize that to a large extent, a lot of pediatric illnesses came down to sleep. And so we're picking up from there. We were talking before this, so it sucks for everybody who doesn't get to hear that, but I'm picking it up at the top.
When I came out into clinical practice after finishing my training in neurology, when I started seeing patients on my own, I realized that with all these challenging problems that kids have that are neurological, almost all of them brought in some aspect of a sleep issue that I was not trained in as part of my neurology training, which was done by the best people in the country, those who were an authority on the subject. They taught me everything but sleep. And so prior to coming out into practice, I had had these discussions with my mentor, my professor, who was one of the pioneers of pediatric neurology, about what I should do in the future, or should I get any further training. And sleep was one of the subjects that came up because there was a big training program in Minneapolis where I trained. And he said, find something more productive. You know, who worries about sleep? I stay up at night and sip whiskey and write my textbook on neurology. So yeah, so he told me a few other things to do, which would be better for me. But he swayed me away from sleep. But then when I arrived in real life practice and started seeing patients on my own, it was a whole different story. So to take that further from there, interestingly, what happened was I was working in this office, large medical group. I was the only child neurologist for them. They had hired their first one. I was seeing a lot of kids. My next door, the office right next door to me was that of a pulmonologist, a lung specialist. And he used to look at sleep studies that were done in children. He used to deal with kids' sleep problems. So I talked to him about this issue. And he said, well, why don't you come sit with me when I look at these sleep studies? And that started a whole new journey for me. So that's how that's how I got into sleep. And so thanks to that guy, that he helped me get into this field. And so there was no turning back from there. So I got training, I went to seminars, I went to workshops, I went to conferences, I read, and then eventually I was still doing neurology and getting better at sleep problems. I learned mostly on my own. Then came an opportunity out of nowhere, and this opportunity was that you need board certification as a physician. You need to be certified. You take these tests, which give you that kind of credibility that you really have learned your subject and you know what you're talking about and so on. So in order to be considered a sleep specialist and certify, you had to go through formal training in sleep. But comes along an opportunity in a sense that board that certified sleep doctors disbanded itself. And they said, okay, we're merging into this, we're creating a whole new system of certifying doctors in sleep. And those doctors who have been practicing and learning sleep can be grandfathered in if they take the test in the next 2-3 years. After that, everybody will have to do a longer formal training. So I was in that part of the career that I couldn't just, taking care of my family and kids and so on, so many responsibilities. I couldn't just go away and go into training again. So that was again another breakthrough, God given, or however you want to look at it. And I got certified and started switching over my practice more and more into sleep. And here I am, uh, years and years later.
So I'm like a hypothesis or a theory that like what people get into, it's a matter of like it's the interest, it's the impact of it, and then it's their aptitude for it. So what was the thing that you saw that made you feel like sleep was going to be something that you could have an outsized impact in? Was it the fact that like your advisor was like, hey, no one, like it's kind of like was a new field, like kind of like a blue ocean, but or like what was the thing that really made you like really dedicate your life to it?
Well, first of all, I didn't have an advisor. Uh, nobody to advise me, and
Hmm.
I had to make these decisions myself.
Okay.
But it was more of an instinct, just like you said, an aptitude. This is kind of, it pulls you in. So you start doing something, and if you feel like you're more comfortable with it, that's part of it. And then secondly, I was coming from a field that was intellectually very challenging. I really liked it. I still like it. Uh, that's neurology. But unfortunately, what happened with my experience in neurology was that, especially with kids, that parents are extremely frustrated with their children's neurological problems. Very often, these are very sad, terrible stories, and sometimes lifelong, sometimes things keep getting worse and so on. So it's very hard to find a point where people say to you, "Oh, thank you, doctor. You did such a wonderful job." Okay. And on the other side, I mean, for the physician to feel like, really, am I making a difference in this family's life? Am I really doing what I became a physician for? Am I making a difference? Come to the sleep aspect of it, it was very straightforward. You instantly, not necessarily instantly, but you very quickly make people, you do the right thing, the person's life changes, whether it's a child, whether it's a grown up, whoever it is. And now, having done this for many years, looking back, I tell everybody, I'm so proud to be in a medical specialty where I don't have to send you to have an operation. So to go under the knife, and I don't really have to give you any kind of a chemical, i.e., a medicine that could potentially be harmful for you in the long run or immediately, and still improve your quality of life. There's not very many things in medicine, not many specialties, not many people, not many medical doctors who can claim to do that, right?
Hmm.
So a major part of what I do is talking to people, understanding what's happening to them, and giving them the right advice, and oftentimes modifying things. There are tests to do and treatments to give, and oftentimes there are devices, high tech and low tech, all kinds of things that will make a major change in a person's life. But it's such a major change, it affects people's relationships and jobs and happiness and so many things. So you can see, you made an intervention, you helped somebody along, you listened to them, you talked to them, you convinced them, and here they are. Things are so much better. And they tell you, so things are so much better. And that's so much more professional satisfaction, so much
Hmm.
gratitude for, thank God I'm doing this.
I've talked
So
to a Yeah, I've talked to a lot of doctors, and that is like the commonality. Like I was talking to a cardiovascular person, doctor. I don't know why I did that, but he said that the thing he liked is that he'd see someone like having a cardiac problem, and he put a stent in, and it would open up, and it was just like their lives came back. And so I think that's which is it's one of the benefits of the medical field, where when you find that part that you really love, you have that structure where you like an outside person can see, oh, that there's a reason why they're great at this, which is unfortunate. There's like people can't easily find that in other fields. So but it's just like a all that work, all that sacrifice, all those textbooks that you had to like mentally chew through for like a better part of a decade. um it's nice that at the end you have something that it can be so meaningful. So I was reading a biography on Ulysses S. Grant, which S is actually not his middle name, but anyways, he was talking about how Napoleon would say he only needed like 4 hours of sleep a night, and Grant was saying essentially that like he thought that was stupid. Like he was taking like he was basically saying that Napoleon would have to take naps throughout the day because you need a certain amount. And so I'm curious of the two, what is like a good amount of sleep, and then how do you know if it's a good amount of sleep? Was Grant right in that like typically if you get your 4 hours to sleep a night, you're probably gonna take a nap at like two, or was Napoleon just like this really weird guy who only needed 4 hours of sleep, and that was optimal for him? Like how does that actually work? Like who's right, Grant or Napoleon in this situation?
Great question. So what we don't know about these famous people is what was their health truly like,
Hmm.
right? I mean, we don't know if they had blood sugar problems or heart problems or high blood pressure, or certainly it's very likely they had some mental health issues just from the jobs that they did. And so there's a whole, actually, let's not get into that because it's a whole different discussion of how uh, famous people aren't really mentally stable very often.
Yes,
Yeah.
sometimes I think for Grant, it feels different for Grant because he was so bad at everything else in life. Like he was literally the worst store clerk in Galena, Illinois, where everyone would try and like swindle him and stuff. Like so his family had to employ him because he just was bad at everything. But then when there's a war, he knew how to put things into place where things would play out. So I think that's interesting versus like a Napoleon guy. I mean, they literally call it the Napoleon complex. So he's
Yeah.
like emperor of France and Europe and all this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you'd have to really. I mean, if you've read biographies of these people, it gets you to think about what their true personalities were like,
Mm-hmm.
because we read about their what they did in life. Like you're asking me what I how I got into what I do and so on. So I tell you a story. What you don't know is what's behind that story, right?
Mm-hmm.
How I live my life every day and what my work does to my health and what my mental health is like and so on. So to move away from that a little bit, so the question is, how do you know how much sleep you need? If you consistently get a certain amount of sleep and you feel rested and refreshed and you feel like I can I can function at my best all day this way, that's really how you know how much sleep you need. You don't need a scientist or a sleep doctor to tell you how many hours of sleep you need. What gets thrown around a lot, you need 8 hours of sleep per night, is based on studies that say 90% of people feel rested and refreshed and alert after 8 hours of sleep. There are still 10% out of that 100 who are different, and different to the extent that they may need only 5 hours of sleep, or they may need as much as 10 hours of sleep, and they're still normal. It's just that their body works differently. And those studies that say 8 hours of sleep are now getting old, and life has changed and society has changed. And so going back to the pre-artificial light life, the average was 9 hours of sleep in the United States. So people slept 9 or more hours per night. And then it got into 8 hours and an average of 7 hours. And now it's somewhere around 6.5 hours in the 21st century. So, but that is what people get, not necessarily what people need. So if you truly want to know how much you need because you realize that sleep is so important for your life and your health and your everyday functioning, then you would want a consistent period of time where you can assess how many hours of sleep you need. You would also want to assess what time of the day you get the most sleepy and what time of the day when you wake up you feel the best, which is your circadian rhythm. So it's supposed to be something, but if your body doesn't work how I tell you how it's supposed to be, then you are the one who can best judge how your body works best. So there are good and bad things with that. The good thing is if you recognize how much sleep you need and how your body works best and what time you go to bed and what time you wake up works best for you, then you can adapt your life to according to that if you want. So these days there are so many opportunities. People who like going to bed really late. They go to sleep at 3 in the morning and would like to sleep until 11 or noon. They still can have a productive life and work and be a productive part of society. So that has changed in the last 20, 30, 50 years. What has not changed and is not going to change is how the body is designed to function to begin with. Okay. So we can adapt it to do certain things. We can make the most of however we find our body works the best, but how our body works the best as compared to how it's designed to work the best are slightly different. And so my job when you come talk to me is to find out what's working for you and what's not working for you and how it's supposed to be, and then bridge that gap as much as we can, right? So given genetics and given your life circumstances and given your background and given your needs, what is it that we can do to improve upon how your body is wanting to work at the present time, good or bad, and how it would work the best based on how it's designed. So, I mean, analogy would be you have you have a Jeep and it's supposed to be a four-wheel drive and you're racing Jeeps. So maybe you like to drive fast in a Jeep, but maybe it doesn't, drive so well that way. So then we find out, okay, this is how it's designed, this is how it's supposed to function at its best. Now, how can we bridge that gap in how you want to use it, how you think it works best for you, and then how we can make it work the best. So that's where the job of a person helping you with sleep issues comes in.
That makes sense. When I interact with people, sometimes I just like to think of people as brains in mech suits, and so the Jeep analogy makes sense to me in that like we're kind of just like biological mech suits, with a little. I mean, if you looked at like the brain with all the little tendrils going out the nervous system and whatnot, it really does look like a mech suit. I mean, anyone up there listen to like Google that, and then I'm sorry for the images you'll see if they like, but I mean that's basically what it looks like. Um,
Yeah.
so we have circadian rhythms as a big thing. So go to bed, wake up at similar times. What are other mechanisms that seem to have a good impact on improving a person's quality of sleep?
So in order to get so there's two parts to when you say good sleep, there are two parts to good sleep. One part is how to get the duration of sleep that your body needs, right, as an individual, not based on somebody's numbers, but for you, how much sleep do you need? That's one. And the second is how good is the quality of that sleep? So is it really uh, you're charging your battery, you plug it in, but really does it get charged or not in
Mm-hmm.
the, however long it takes? And so that quality of sleep also is a huge, big factor. So you have to look at both of them. And in order to make the best of them, the more you understand about how the function of sleep happens, what's happening while you're sleeping, why is sleep important, uh, what does it do for you, why does it do that for you, the more you learn about it, the better you can improve upon it. In a basic sense, to be sleepy at a certain time, there are two mechanisms in play that we understand at this time. One mechanism is that of a stopwatch. The watch turns on the moment you wake up for the day, and it's counting how long you've been awake. So it's awake time, stopwatch. The longer you've been awake, the sleepier and more tired you are going to get, and you will get the best sleep after after the longest amount of wakefulness. If you generally speaking, most people after 14, 15, 16 hours of wakefulness need to sleep. The second mechanism is what you called the circadian rhythm, the day and night rhythm. And so that is a a built-in clock in the brain, not a stopwatch, a clock that that regulates the timing, and not just the timing, a whole lot of different mechanisms are all intricately built around that clock. But that clock is set each day to slight variations, and it's modifiable, just like our regular watches and clocks are. So that clock, when it tells the body it's nighttime, combined with the stopwatch telling the body you've been awake this long enough, those two mechanisms coming into play together, synchronizing, give us the best duration and quality of sleep. A whole lot of factors surround this. So this is in a very basic sense, the longer you stay awake, the better you're going to sleep. Combined with when the body says it's nighttime and you've been awake long enough, that combination works the best. If you desynchronize them, it doesn't work very well. Okay, how can you desynchronize them? Say you take a flight from here to Europe. From Wisconsin, it's say you go to England or Germany, 7 hours ahead. From here in California, 9, 10 hours ahead. So you stay up in the plane. You got on the plane. It was daytime for you. You stayed up on the plane. You watched movies. You arrived there. It's going to be nighttime pretty soon. You've been up 18 hours, maybe 19 hours. You want to sleep. But your circadian rhythm is not telling you that, because your circadian rhythm may be in that phase that says it's still daytime. So you may go to sleep, but you'll wake up within a couple of hours. When you're supposed to wake up over there, you've desynchronized it. So you're supposed to wake up. At that time you're going to get really tired and sleepy. So if both mechanisms are in sync, they work the best. If they're not in sync, things don't work very well. So, and there's so many other factors. So I'll let you think about it and ask me something else if you like.
I was just wondering why the two clocks work that way. I was thinking, like I said, because we were hunter gatherers and we would move around, but like the daytime might change a little bit, so you want some way to like optimize for that change. I was just kind of curious. I was just wondering. Um, when I hear about some biological function, I was wondering like why it exists. I don't know. Are there theories for why there's two clocks in this way?
So, 2 points I can make here. One is that recently some people did research on tribes in the Amazon and somewhere else that I can't recall, tribes that still live their primitive hunter-gatherer lifestyle and that are not affected by present-day technology. They still live like they lived for thousands of years. Okay, very small numbers of people remaining. I think one in Africa somewhere and one in the Amazon region. And they found out that these people go to sleep not early, not at sunset. They stay up, they sit around a fire, they talk, they go to bed, and then they wake up very, very early before sunrise when it's still dark. They go hunt, they gather, they do whatever they do, and then they sleep again during the day.
Hmm.
Okay, so they split their sleep cycle in two. So the idea that these people, the researchers, came up with was, oh, this is how humans are designed to function at their best. They should split their sleep cycle in two. They can sleep 4 hours at night and 4 hours during the day, and that's what the body needs. I'm not sure that is really correct, but this was an observational kind of research. The second thing about the why this works, like you said, the hunter-gatherer lifestyle, is that we know the time to wake up as our bodies start waking up naturally, getting ready for the day. There are multiple changes that happen in the body prior to waking up that prime it to get ready, get up, have the best energy, be able to function at your best, go out, go hunt, catch the animal, bring the food. Now, you would say that used to be in the primitive societies primarily a function of men. So how about the women in society? And I don't know the answer to that. But how the body is designed as we observe it, as it functions, is you, in the hour or two before you normally naturally wake up, your body starts getting ready for the day. You wake up, you like bright light wakes you up, your blood sugar starts rising, you start getting hungry, your your muscles work better, you are ready to go out and use your energy and do the job that you were supposed to do. So that we know that this waking up, there's a system in the body that primes us to function best in the morning. Okay, that way. Now, a lot of people will say, well, I don't function very well in the morning. I function the best in the afternoon. So then there comes that individual variation. And then you can ask the question, oh, why do some people function better this way or that way? And there may be answers to those. But in terms of the biology of waking up in the morning, there is that case. So that is what people think that came from the hunter-gatherer lifestyle very early. So the follow-up question to that would be, well, why hasn't that changed itself? I mean, I just, as we were talking, I told you I saw these skeletal remains of humans that were 800,000 years old in North Africa. So East Africa. So if this has been going on for 800,000 years, humans have gone through so many phases of evolution in these 800,000 years. Why hasn't this system changed? Okay. Part of the difference, I think my comment on that would be that our lifestyle and way of doing things has primarily changed only in the last couple hundred years, and particularly in the last 100 years with the advent of artificial light. Before that, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, we lived a kind of a very similar lifestyle. So that hadn't changed. So what happens in the next 200, 500 years may change that biology.
What does the artificial, it just elongates the day? Like, what does the artificial light do?
Artificial light does a lot of things. One, yes, it prolongs the day. Two, the effect of light interferes with this mechanism of the rhythm of day and night, the body's recognition of when it's nighttime and time to sleep, and when it's dark, when it's so dark or bright light. Those are two major ways the body's clock adjusts itself. So now we've modified how the clock is going to function. It's not natural daylight or it's artificial light. The second part of this is more intricate, which is the different wavelengths of light. So we started out using lights that used burning oils, for example, for lamps and candles. And now then we use the tungsten lamp, the light bulb that for over 100 years. And now we've moved on to using these LED electronic lights. And also in this time, we also used fluorescent lights, and they all produce different wavelengths of light. So warmer colors, more red, more blue, more green, all of that has effects on our biology. So that is a very active field of research on how different wavelengths of light affect us. And how do they affect us? They affect how different mechanisms in our bodies are primed to work at their best. So researchers have found that certain wavelengths of light in in mammals, not humans, in other animals, they have found um, certain phases of their life, certain hormones are enhanced and they are activated by exposure to certain wavelengths of light. So they have found that certain wavelengths of light activate the system of stress hormones. Certain wavelengths of light help them go to sleep better or wake up earlier. So that is something that is an active field of research, and people have tried in us humans as a result of that research. People have tried to apply that in different ways. We only see the very basics of it, like you avoid blue light when you're looking at the computer, and you wear a blue blocker kind of eyeglasses, or these days now uh, computer screens and phone screens block out certain kinds of light at night. So we've adapted some things, but there's a whole lot more to it that we don't really quite understand yet very well.
That makes sense. Well, going back to one of the things we were previously talking about, uh, one of our listeners, knowing that this call was coming up, asked me a question that I'm going to ask you, which I like to do. So if people listen in, if you have questions, send them to me, because you never know who I'm going to talk to. And this is just like, if you ever have someone who knows about sleep, um, they've been waiting since Jabron was on, actually. So that's good. So I hope they're
Okay.
still out there, not mad at me. So one of them asked, sometimes I wake up after a solid night's sleep feeling tired still. What's happening there? And what could they have done to not have that happen? Because I imagine if you have a solid night's sleep, it's kind of like a defeated way to start the day. But yeah, what would you do there?
So many questions need to be answered about that solid night of sleep. Uh, and those have to do with the timing of it. Those have to do with what you eat or drink prior to going to sleep. Those have to do with the environment that you sleep in. They have to do with your breathing. If you're breathing well enough, you're getting enough oxygen while you're sleeping. Uh, it There is an effect of body movements on your sleep that you may not be aware of. And of all the things, there is something called sleep state misperception, that a person sleeps for a solid night and wakes up feeling they got no sleep at all. And that is related to how busy their mind tends to be during the night. So there are many different possible reasons for somebody thinking that they sleep for a solid night, yet they wake up tired. So, and that actually, that the answer to that question is a very familiar one in my office, in patients that who I see. This is the kind of conversation we have. We go through an entire day's routine of their life. What happens? So what time you wake up, what breakfast you have, how much caffeine you have, caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, cannabis, whatever, medicines. Do you have other health problems? Do you snore? Do you breathe okay? Do you get up at night? Are your covers off when you wake up, and so on? So there's a whole lot of detail that is needed to answer that question, but it's a very common question.
Hmm. Are there common things? I know everyone to some extent is like fairly unique, but at the same time, we're not that unique. But are there common things that you suggest people stay away from? Or I imagine like caffeine before bed would be an obvious one to get rid of. But what are some things that they should be eating or not eating? That type of thing.
So yeah, typically, if you have a heavy meal before going to bed, you may have heartburn, so that can be a problem. If you have a light snack, starchy snack, that maintains your blood sugar levels better during the night, so that's better. If you go to bed and it's warm and cozy, you fall asleep better. If your environment is cool and it allows your body to cool down and lose heat during the night. You sleep better. Um, so there are general basic things. If you have any, I have patients who tell me they have to have a cigarette just before they go to bed. Okay. And so they come in because they can't go to sleep, and we have this basic discussion about their routine, and they say, oh yeah, I smoke a cigarette before I go to bed. I have this habit. And I say nicotine is a very strong brain stimulant, and how can your mind switch off when you have a certain amount of nicotine circulating in your bloodstream? So there are sometimes very common sense things that you just need to talk to somebody about this before you realize, oh, this is what I'm doing wrong. Similarly, a lot of people don't recognize this, and with the holidays coming up, when alcohol consumption dramatically increases, and longer nights and winter time. So uh, doctors will often ask you about alcohol, like they'll ask you about smoking. What oftentimes people don't pay attention to is the type of alcohol, right? So, for example, if you drink wine, it also depends on the type of wine. If you have white wine, which is higher in sugar content than red wine, do you have red wine that is sweet or not sweet? So the amount of sugar in the alcoholic drink makes a lot of difference. And then there's alcohol itself. On the flip side, people who drink hard liquor, it's smaller amounts, but it's higher amount of alcohol. It's less sugar, but the alcohol amount is more, so that has a different effect on people. So all of those factor into all of this. And so I think a lot about alcohol because people really don't recognize the alcohol issue uh, being a major one. And sometimes people think it helps them go to sleep, which it can and does. The problem is, I call it bipolar. It has two different kinds of effects depending on how much of alcohol is in your bloodstream. So if you're drinking, if a small amount of alcohol is in your bloodstream, it's a stimulant, it helps you feel better, you're happier, you're more relaxed. And as you keep drinking, the amount of alcohol gradually increases, and then it becomes a depressant. Depressant
Hmm.
in medical terms means it starts shutting off your brain. So it makes you tired, it makes you sleepy. You have a few drinks, now you're sleepy, you're going to go to sleep. When you go to sleep, obviously you're not drinking anymore. Now your liver is rapidly breaking the alcohol down. The blood level starts dropping. So as it drops, it again becomes a stimulant and it starts waking you up. Now, whether you recognize it or not, but you may be waking up so much that by the morning you think, oh, I had a few drinks, I slept for a solid night and I woke up feeling awful. Not just the hangover, it's just that you were constantly waking up during the night because of the low, as the alcohol level dropped, and that affected your sleep. So it could be many different things. And then when the alcohol is acting as a depressant and making you sleepy, it also affects people in for their breathing problems because 10 to 15% of the population in general has breathing problems in sleep. So it's quite common. So you have a few drinks, you fall asleep, your people around you notice that you snore a lot when you have a few drinks. Well, what that truly means is you have trouble breathing, your oxygen levels repeatedly dropping, you're repeatedly waking up to breathe, and very often you don't know that your sleep is being interrupted by this. You wake up in the morning, you say something is wrong, I don't feel good. So the problem with our human perception of what happens during the night is very often it's faulty, and we don't remember or recognize what happens to us, but in the morning we say the result is really bad. So that's why it's hard to say for that one line question of I wake up after a solid night's sleep. Why don't I feel good? Could be
Mm-hmm.
so many different factors to it.
That makes sense. The I was reading a study a while ago that they were putting like a radar detector type thing in people who are older in their rooms, and they were showing that older people were waking up at night for a little bit and then going back to bed, but they weren't remembering it because it was a short amount of time, and those people had a statistically higher chance. They had a higher rate of Alzheimer's. And now there's some new stuff coming out saying that sleep is one of the like a good like blocker for Alzheimer's or something like that. But why so like me myself, like every now and again, I will like just wake up at like 3 in the morning, and I'm like, and I've seen so many horror movies that so I'm like, oh god, am I being haunted? But then I just go back to bed. But like my first thought is like, if this is a horror movie, like something's gonna attack me in the next 10 seconds, and I just like I leave one eye open and then I just go back to bed. But like, but my wife wakes up at I know so many people who like just wake up at like 2 or 3 for like 10 minutes and like, oh that's weird, and
Yeah,
they go back to bed. What
yeah.
and they go to like for me, I'll just like I go to bed at 10 every night. Like I'm very boring. I don't drink. I don't do any like I'm a very boring person. So like why would someone like me I guess like why do people in general, I'll keep it general, because I don't want free advice. But why are people waking up at like 2 to 3 in the morning routinely? Like let's say like 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Why is that happening?
So one, we all wake up 5 to 6 times an hour.
Hmm.
Okay. Every night, everybody. That's so when we study somebody in a sleep lab, if we see that they're waking up 5 or 6 times an hour, we say it's normal.
Hmm.
Okay. So what does that waking up mean? What that waking up means is that your brain activity matches that of an awake person during that time. And it's a very brief period of time that you're asleep and then you wake up and you go back into sleep. So, but it's considered biologically, it's an awakening, even if it's brief. So that happens to everybody many times an hour. Two, if the awakening is only a few seconds, typically 8 seconds or less, you have no recollection of being awake. Okay? So if you have a breathing problem or whatever, or you're uncomfortable or your back hurts or your shoulder hurts, you toss and turn and move during the night, you may be doing it many times, but you have no recollection that you do this because you just briefly wake up, turn over and go back to sleep, so you don't remember that it happened. And thirdly, the question is, well, why does an otherwise normal person just wake up 4 or 5 hours into the night? Then again, there could be many factors. So it could be a dream that woke them up. It could be a normal physiological function that abruptly woke them up. It could be something in their environment that woke them up. It could be that they were hot or cold, uh, or there was noise or light or movement or something that uh, um, interrupted their sleep. So it could be a perfectly normal physiological function that wakes a person up, as long as it happens, once a week or twice a week. It's not something that's constantly affecting them. So for most what we call disorders of sleep, things that break down, they are usually measured in how long and how frequently the problem affects the person. So if you say, I can't sleep 2 times a night for the last 6 months, you would still not qualify as having insomnia, okay? Because the requirement is it has to be at least 3 times a night for 3 nights a week, excuse me, 3 nights a week for at least 3 months that you've had trouble sleeping during the night. Then I'm going to call it chronic insomnia. So to differentiate what happens normally to people and what doesn't, what is really not normal that affects their health, there are these artificial kind of criteria to say this is really wrong and this is still within the normal range. So so that's part of the human makeup and the variability of how the human body works and how the mind works. So yeah, a lot of people do wake up. I sometimes wake up during the night and turn over, go back to sleep, and some nights I'll abruptly wake up. Like this morning, I typically sleep 7 or 8 hours, uh, and this morning I went to bed last night late, and I woke up in less than 6 hours, and I'm like, why am I already awake? Okay. Um, but some nights are like that, and I tell everybody, if this is something once in a while, and it's weird. So whatever happened, and I couldn't go back to sleep. So you shrug your shoulders, and so be it. So if I feel I'm ready to get out of bed, I didn't get out of bed, and didn't feel ready to get out of bed. But if you feel you're ready to get out of bed, get out of bed. It's okay.
Going back to I have a question related to the clocks. So there's like this military way of falling asleep where they put their feet above their head, and apparently, like if they just do it for like 10 to 20 minutes, like it's really good. Does that reset the awake clock so they feel alive again? So like, have you heard of this concept? This like way of like taking naps, like power naps. And my guess would be is like maybe it like resets that clock that lets you know how long you've been awake, so then you feel more rested. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on power naps and what mechanisms do you think are at work to make them so effective?
So um, the 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 research is you can you can take naps and still remain healthy, active, and productive for short periods of time. Short periods meaning a few weeks, maybe a few months. So if you're in a battle zone, you can't really afford to sleep for 6, 7, or 8 hours because you might get killed, right? So you take turns and you take a 20-minute nap and you refresh yourself and you go on for another 3, 4 hours, then you take a 20, 30-minute nap and you take turns. And that you can, practically you can do. And so research has found that if you did that, you take these short power naps, that you could live that life like that for a short time, not as a lifestyle. Why? Because the body gets to perform some of its functions enough that it can sustain itself for these few months. The body is very forgiving in that. We do all kinds of weird things to ourselves. We eat weird stuff. We do weird things, and yet, it seems like it's the body's not designed to do those things, but it still lets us do those things and live on and not really terribly affect our health in bad ways. But the requirement is that this is not forever. This is not how you live your life. Similarly, it's kind of deviating from your question, but similarly goes night shift work. So the body is not designed to stay up all night when it's dark, and some people just have to work night. And the idea is, the science is that if you work night shift for longer than a year, or up to a year, the body may forgive that. But longer than a year, you're really shortening your lifespan. I see people who've been working night shift for 15, 18, 20 years, and I tell them, you're way past that 1 year limit. You're into 10, 15, or 20 years, and they say, I'm going to have to keep doing this until I retire, because this is all that can fit into my lifestyle or my needs. I can't do anything else. So then we make our own independent decisions on, this is what I want to do or can do, or this is what my circumstances are. So going back to what works best, do these power naps work? So for an average person on a daily basis, if you take a 20-minute nap in your day, that is perfectly fine and good. And if you took this nap, the requirement is it's 20 or 30 minutes or less, and it's in the middle or later part of your day. Then if you took that nap, you're likely to wake up refreshed for the following 5, 6, 7 hours before you go to bed, and will not reset that
Hmm.
timer we talked about. So to reset that timer that turned on the moment you woke up in the morning, what's required is you going into deep sleep. And if you only take this nap for 15 or 20 minutes, you don't go into deep sleep. It's very light sleep.
Hmm.
And what that light sleep does is it eliminates the chemical that accumulates in the brain with fatigue, with activity, with brain activity. That same chemical is eliminated or fought off actually by caffeine. But caffeine has other effects. So the healthier thing to do instead of drinking an afternoon cup of coffee to stay awake and do your work is really to take a 15, 20-minute nap and go on. And you'll be much more efficient and able to do your work better. Then again, we make our own independent decisions on what works best for you or me in a particular circumstance. But the body works better there. So a nap a day, one short nap in the afternoon for a person on an average person with a regular lifestyle who works during the day, sleeps at night, 7, 8 hours at night. Yes, that works. A nap that's longer, an hour, hour and a half. What's going to happen is you'll go into deep sleep. That timer will reset itself. You'll wake up feeling tired,
Hmm.
groggy. You'll have trouble going to sleep that night. If you do go to sleep, your sleep will not be of that good quality. So that's because that timer effect was desynced from desynchronized from the system, and now you're only depending on your circadian rhythm to make you sleep during the night, which takes away from the intensity of that sleep, the depth of that sleep. So that changes.
That makes sense. The it reminds me of a question I wanted to ask you about starchy food. You mentioned if you take like starchy food before sleep, it's better than doing other things. Um, I heard that it's good not to eat up to like 3 hours before you go to bed. Is there an optimization benefit in eating a starch or anything before going to bed, or is it generally something you should skip and then like not eat before bed? If that makes sense. Like, could you
Yeah,
like
I mean,
supercharge your sleep with a substance like a starchy, potato or something?
yeah, yeah. The is culturally, a lot of people what they do is they have dinner around sunset. Okay, sunset 5:36, end of their day. 5:30, 6:30, and they go to bed at 10, so 3, 4 hours later. Yeah, so if you were awake for 3, 4 hours, just before you go to bed, you may feel like you need something additional to fill up your stomach. So the idea of having a starchy snack is that one, starch breaks down slowly and it maintains your blood sugar level during the night. The second is it fills up your stomach, and that heaviness on your stomach also adds to the sleepiness effect. So making you go to sleep better. It's just like the coziness effect of the warmth of the bed or the covers when you go to sleep. That help makes it easier to go to sleep. The question you're asking is if you eat a meal just before bedtime,
Or just like a snack?
that, yeah, a snack is harmless and it'll help you go to sleep as long as it's not high in sugar and it's not high in fat. Okay. So it could be a piece of bread, it could be a potato, it could be a corn on the cob, it could be cornbread, or, it could be cereal, something like that. If it has fiber in it, that's even better. If it's low in sugar, that's great. If it's low in fat, that's great. So that you can do, and that'll help you go to sleep better. And it's not going to mess with your blood sugar levels because then the opposite of that is if you had a larger meal at bedtime, now your body has no way to utilize the instantly available sugar. So its immediate answer to that is store it as fat. So people, so that is not a good idea. And then there are cultures around the world who people just have dinners late in the evening. So um, they go to bed at, say, later, maybe 11-ish, 11:30, midnight, and they have their dinner. They start dinner at 9, 9:30, 10 o'clock sometimes. A lot of people in different parts of the world. So that is not considered to be a good idea because you know, we follow along the how different diseases are evolving in those societies, and there tends to be a higher percentage of people with diabetes and obesity and so on. So that's not considered a healthy way to do things.
So do you have like a hot potato on the side of your bed before you go to sleep, or is this like hot? What are you doing?
What do I do?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not a good example for that thing. Uh, I and that's related to my current lifestyle, which
Mm,
involves being in multiple time zones and
mm.
at different times when I have meetings with people in different parts of the world, and so uh, that's a short-term thing. So, but in the long term, yeah, I will often have a little snack, uh, uh, maybe a small cookie or half a banana, or a small amount of leftover food from the dinner. Okay, a couple bites. But if I have more, then I know it affects me badly. Okay. So when do I have more? I have more, again, part of the lifestyle or circumstances that can affect you in the short term is when I eat dinner late, right? So I'm working 12 hours and I get home really late and it's close to my bedtime and I'm hungry, so I'll eat a big meal and then soon after that I want to go to sleep. That's not a good idea, and that I recognize personally that causes weight gain, and it has, and so that's a personal issue of how you balance life out. So it's it um, and that is true of everyone. So life being life, and things we do, and phases of life that we live through, and things we decide to do knowingly in life, sometimes working harder, longer hours, not eating at regular hours, regular times, or not choosing the right kind of food to eat in parts of our life. All of those things happen. All of those things happen to pretty much everyone. The difference is if you recognize what's wrong, then you can fix it. If it becomes a permanent long-term lifestyle for you, then it's a problem. And that's what I try to avoid.
That makes sense. The another topic I wanted to ask you about is so sometimes people when they're going to bed they can't shut their brain off, and usually or related to this there are many people that suffer from anxiety that also can't shut their brain off. Uh, what are things that they can do to make it easier for them to go to bed? Because like it's like a negative cycle. If they're not getting sleep, then they wake up and it's worse, worse, worse. Especially if you're suffering from a mental illness, like it's not probably the best way to go about things. So, how can people who struggle with shutting their brain off before or when they're trying to go to bed, what can they do about it?
So one part of it we already talked about in quite a bit of detail, not taking long naps and not having all those foods and dietary things that affect us. But you go to bed for one reason or another, your mind just gets going and it's hard to go to sleep. So if that's a routine, like I said, that's not just one off, but this happens every night. If that's the case, then you need to learn techniques that help you switch off your mind. Okay? Uh, as I say, it's important to logically understand the process of going to sleep. What is it? What does it mean to go to sleep? Right. So to go to sleep, if you break it down, is a process where the mind switches attention completely, switches attention from your life, your feelings, your emotions, your comfort, your discomfort, and completely focuses on the maintenance work that needs to happen on a daily basis to keep you healthy. That maintenance work is for the brain and for the rest of the body. The first requirement is switching off that from paying attention to everything to just focusing on that maintenance work. That switch from one to the other is like a light switch, right? Turn it on and off. So when people have trouble switching that off so that their mind can completely focus on its maintenance work, the question is what prevents their mind from that process? If it's not something that's environmental, it's not something that they have control over, it's not something that's related to their habits or diet or routine, and it's just purely simply that, hey, over time, I have become that way. I realize I've had situations like this. I've had traumatic situations, emotional situations, whatever it is. My mind is just busy. If that's the case, then you learn these techniques that focus your mind on what we understand are things that the mind is designed to focus on as a priority over everything. What are those things? What's most important to you emotionally? What makes you happy and comfortable emotionally? If you focus on the physical act of your breathing, if you focus on how different physical parts of your body feel in that moment, simply noticing how parts of the body feel. So there's a process that you can learn to go through. I teach that regularly to my patients on group visits I do on Zoom. So that's a process, and you can, it's not rocket science, but it is these are techniques that you need an instructor to work with. And you learn these with repetition. You can't just go to a class or uh, take cues from what I'm telling you and just say, okay, I'm going to do this. There's a process to do this, but the concept is that as you go through a series of these techniques, these are based on the science of how the mind is designed to prioritize certain things. Of all the worries, all the thoughts, all the things that go through your mind that keep it busy, as you go through these techniques, the mind is designed in such a way that these are most important to it. So once you learn to do these properly, it's like automatically your mind focuses on these and completely relaxes and stops thinking about the rest of whatever is happening. The weather's changing, it's going to be cold, hot, the words, whatever problems are there, what needs to be solved, he said, she said, bills to pay, what assignments for the next day, whatever it is. Have all of those things go in the background, including aches and pains, which very often affect people at night and their sleep. So all those things go in the background, and what comes to the foreground is, okay, this is what I live my life for, what's most important. If I think of X, Y, Z, it makes me feel instantly comfortable and safe. We call that a happy place. And I pay attention to how I breathe and different parts of my body, and all of a sudden, the mind only focuses on those things and everything else in the background. So that is a process of training yourself to switch off your mind. And that is the healthiest way of dealing with it as compared to a chemical that forcefully shuts off your mind, because they have short and long-term effects.
Makes sense. Um, I could totally see you being the voiceover for some of those apps. You know, uh, I have one, and I've been trying to do it more, like the meditation apps, the mindful apps.
Yeah.
So I can see your voice. You have a very calming voice. But I don't know if that's something you guys are going to build, but I'd love to see it.
So we have an app. It's like a demo app
Oh,
on the App Store if you want to look at it, under the office name, Sehatu. And you can download it. There's several meditations on it. There's other recordings on it. There's other some functionality is not active, but the recordings and the media are active. So it's a yeah. Actually, I have some meditations on some of these meditation apps that are out there, and yeah, that's part of what we do.
Makes sense.
So
So what's the future of your work? Like where do you see Sehatu and uh, I don't know. I couldn't guess your age, but eventually you're gonna retire. So like what do you want to do for the remainder of your working career?
yeah, so the human lifespan is very short, right?
Mm-hmm.
So once you realize that something is really important to you, and you feel like you have the knowledge, the skills, the ability to give people something, then your job is to do everything to transfer it to people to benefit people. So, and the sleep problems tend to be global and increasing, and large populations being affected by them. So we are actively working internationally in different countries, um, establishing uh, mechanisms so that we can help people deal with their sleep problems better and be healthier. It's not just in the way I look at it. Uh, a world where people sleep better is a peaceful world. Okay. People feel better, feel happier, are more productive, they're more focused, they're not angry, they're not depressed, um, they don't want to fight, they want to work. And that can have a tremendous impact. So I'm here today, I'll be gone tomorrow, not just, retire. That's human. It's a human limitation. It's not, it's beyond individuals. It's the concept of if we have come at that point in science and in our knowledge that we understand what sleep is and how it works and how important it is, how it connects with every aspect of our lives and health problems, particularly chronic health problems, these diabetes, aches and pains, and heart disease, and cancer, and everything. So if that's the case, then we do all we can, and we are doing all we can to have a global impact on them, not just here in the States, but anywhere that we can find friends and connections and resources to help. So we are. So that's so you heard me say, I'm have meeting with people in different time zones. I have a meeting in China, and then I have a meeting in the Middle East, and I have a meeting somewhere else. And so arranging those meetings in different time zones, that's what's affecting my sleep and my routine and my eating habits at the present time. But this is something that I took upon myself in this part of my life that I better do this because life is short and do what you can to have a positive impact on society.
So this is kind of like a weird line to go down. So you tell me if like this is like too much, but how much of what you do now? Because I know you're a dad, and if we had your son, so people try and guess who his son is. I feel like it really shouldn't be that hard. I mean, other than the company name. I mean, like But anyways, everyone guess. Um, is there a component of what you do that's just setting an example for I'm gonna not say his name. Everyone has to guess who it is. But is there a component of working so hard for the future you want to see setting a good example for your sons, or does that like how does that come
You know,
into it?
it's an observation. Okay, so not a plan from my part.
Mm.
So I don't do anything intentionally to have an impact on my kids. The observation is how parents live their life every day is what their kids do and learn. I can have 100 talks with my kids. They're not going to do what I tell them. But if I live my life a certain way, they're going to follow in my path. And they have, and they're very headstrong. They know what they want, what's important to them, and so they've chosen to do what they're doing, and they're they're very hardworking, they're very conscientious, and it's not because I have taught them. I mean, obviously it's not one parent. My wife has a strong influence on them too. So, but my observation is that this is how you can't tell your kids to be a certain way. You live your life, you take care of your kids, they will follow in your footsteps if you're a good person, hopefully.
That makes sense. I don't have kids, but I asked lots of questions about kids because I think it's neat, and we're all a product of people wanting kids. You know, if people didn't want to have kids, like we wouldn't exist unless we're somehow cloned.
Yeah, so sometimes people have kids without wanting them.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate for the kids. There's a I'm just like, wow, this is like a dark turn. But like, there's a town nearby where there's a woman who had like 13 kids, but she kept she. I'll say this quickly, we can move on. But she kept killing them in different ways, and it was like really sad. And it's like, that. Why did you keep having them? Like, she knew that she was doing things that she knew would have kids. I don't know. It's really weird. It's sad because like the kids didn't do anything. They're just alive. So, it's unfortunate that people take out their problems on, uh, like go fight someone who can fight back. But I guess it's the idea that they can't fight back. But that's interesting that you don't go the lecture route, especially given like you've probably had so many lectures in your life, with your degree. You're like, you know what, this doesn't work. just
Yeah.
lead by example.
Yeah, lectures don't work. Yeah, that's my experience. Now, we have this kind of a discussion often in our family, especially between me and my wife, on, what leads to, you know, people having kids, because our friends who we've known for many years, our family, extended family, people around our age group have kids who are growing up, kids who are doing different things. So we often have this discussion on what leads to kids doing certain things in life. Usually, I know a lot of very goal-oriented, very smart, very productive kids who are doing great things. And always the question is, well, why is this child turning out to be like this? How come they're doing this? And yeah, I mean, there's often it's all retrospective. You look back and say, okay, who are their parents? What is their genetics? How did they, how was the upbringing, and so on. But for somebody who's looking to have kids or with the potential of having kids in the future, the thing to look at is you make first thing that's really important is find your happiness. Finding your happiness means prioritizing yourself and and recognizing yourself as a good person. Okay. That is the prime requirement before you can give love to any other person. Now when you are ready, when you are a couple and you are in love with somebody and you are going to have kids, then the next thing is to provide them with a loving, comforting environment, and you take care of the kids. And the thing subsequent to that is you live a life that you want your kids to live. They will follow in your footsteps. They will do what makes them happy. But happiness, being full, having a feeling of being fulfilled, being complete, having confidence in yourself, those are more important qualities than, to me, than somebody who we can say is going to make a lot of money. The money comes after. Okay. The person's quality of life matters. Who they are, how they live their life, what they feel their life is worth, how they're doing, how they feel on a daily basis. So being miserable is not worth having all the money in the world, or, you know, people say you're successful, but you're miserable every day. I don't see that as being worthwhile. So I don't want my kids to be that way either.
That makes sense. There's a book by Marcus Aurelius called The Meditations, and he talks in it about how he reminds himself that like when people compliment you or whatever, it's like it doesn't matter. Like we're all gonna die soon anyway. Turn to dust. It's like so
I
just do what
totally
you want to
agree.
do anyway. Yeah, just do whatever you
I
want to do.
totally I totally agree with that. Yeah. So somebody said, yeah, it's encouraging. Yeah, you're a good person. Your kids are good. Yeah, great. Thank you. But it's like, what? Yeah, my significance in the universe is very little. I'm here today. I won't be here tomorrow. Will probably make no difference to the universe. I'm one moving part that was supposed to be, to exist and then change forms and be something else. Okay, so be it. I will do my part in what I'm designed to do. So be positive, be productive, be happy.
That makes sense.
Very,
You
very short life, goes very quickly.
yeah. Are you a fan of Bob Marley, musician?
Am I a fan of him? Not necessarily, but yeah, I
You're
just,
saying some of his lyrics. That's all. You're just you're just saying some of his lyrics.
yeah, I mean, there are, I call these universal truths. So a lot of
Hmm.
people recognize these things and say, so I'm not the first one to say these things. There's a lot of people say the same thing over and over. And they
Yeah, no,
have
it's beautiful music.
for thousands of years, for written history and for famous people or not famous people and books and musicians. People have said the same things many times. It's just, these just are the theme. As you get older and more experienced and live your life, I think you tend to come to the same kind of conclusions of what life is and why we do what we do.
It makes sense. Yeah, I was just saying it because I like Bob Marley, and I'm always wondering what people are listening to. Do you have like a track that you listen to while you're working, or are you a lover of music? Some
I,
people do not care about music at all.
I love music. I love music of a certain kind. Mostly, it's it is instrumental, or I mean, it could be, um, uh, and a lot of it is the vocals are Sufi vocals. So that then again, they're more philosophical.
Hmm.
So more Eastern, but could be Western too. Uh, Now, loving music does not necessarily mean that I listen to music all the time. So there is music in the background when I'm in the office. There's music in the background. It's usually jazz, but it's part of my life, but it's not consciously like if you ask me lyrics to any song, I probably wouldn't be able to give you any.
That makes sense. Is there a band that you like in particular that has the instrumentals that you like?
Um, they're all no, there's several. I mean, I originally being from Pakistan, my native language is Urdu. So there are some musicians and some poets that I like listening to when I am in that mood. Um, these days, I'm working, long hours, so it's just work, 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 unfortunately. So not unfortunately, out of choice, uh, but when I do get the chance to enjoy the music, that's the kind of music I enjoy.
Yeah, I don't know any Pakistan music, so I mean, like, literally, give me a name so I can look it up after this call.
Yeah, so there is a woman by the name of Abida, Abida,
Hmm.
Abida Parveen, Parveen, and she recently had a fantastic concert here in San Francisco, recently, a couple of years ago. She's a fabulous Sufi singer, very uh,
Sufi.
if you Google Sufi music and Abida Parveen, you'll find lots of her music, and it's so I really like her music, and I on the spot I don't think I could name anybody else, but there are she's one of the best.
Sweet, I'll check it out. I've never heard of Sufi music before, so I'm gonna check
Oh
out a whole
yeah,
new genre. That's gonna be awesome. I'm
oh
looking
yeah,
forward to it.
yeah. You'll find lots of Western Sufi music too. So I mean, you can ask really the question to ask is what does the word Sufi mean? And so that opens up a whole new discussion.
Yeah, I'm gonna Google it after the fact because I know we're going long and I want to wrap it up with the last two questions so I don't eat up your whole day.
Yeah, go
Um,
ahead.
what are some books that you're currently reading when you have a chance to read?
Um, oh, my favorite book of all time is The Alchemist. Have you heard of The Alchemist? Paulo Coelho.
It's yeah, it's there's a
It's not a
story
big book.
within.
It's a really small book.
Yeah,
I've read it
I've read it.
multiple times.
I like this story of
It's just
happiness.
it just struck that chord. I think a lot of people like it and it's been translated into many languages. It's not, I mean, it's not a complicated novel. And it's not very big. And I think he wrote it in the early part of his career. So it's been many years. He's written many books after that, but that tends to be the concept of that book and what happens to the main character in that book. That tends to be my favorite story,
Yeah,
The
I like
Alchemist.
the yeah, I like the one where I think it's like a parable within the story, or it is the story where like there's a person who he sends his son to like like a really smart guy to learn how to be happy or like be fulfilled, and then like he gives like the kid, I won't spoil this for anyone, but like he gives the kid a task and it's like a parable throughout the day because like he can't like keep water in a cup and a spoon while doing all these other things. So I like that. I really like the parables in there. Um,
Yeah.
so
So, these are all based on historical old classic folk stories from different cultures. So these are adapted from those, basically wise man tales. So there's a lot of those kinds of stories out there.
yeah, I think parables are fun. Like even the like the Hansel and Gretel type ones, because there's
Yeah.
it's like they have a lot of really interesting lessons in them if you like just sit and listen to them. Because I mean like the with the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, like he said stuff 2,000 years ago, and it's like we're resonating with it now, 2,000 years in the future.
Right.
Um, so you talked a lot about ways you're helping out other people. How can listeners listening in help out you guys? Or is there anything you'd put the collective will of listeners into a direction, either for you or for a cause that you care about?
The first thing you can do is, if you agree with what we're trying to do, what we're working on doing, wish us well. The combined wish, the positive thought of people who want to help out, that philosophically means a lot in the universe. Okay. This positive energy that's out there. Uh, if you can do nothing else to help somebody, just give them positive thoughts. The second thing that you can do is, if you want to reach out to us, certainly we're happy. If there's something we can do to help you, we're happy to do that. If there's something that you can offer us in this journey, in this journey of when somebody says, I want to feed all the hungry people in the world, right? So that's not going to happen. But if they didn't have this mission, they wouldn't then the one, two, five, 10, or 100 people who get fed wouldn't be fed by them. So that's like the wish, the mission we have is to help everyone in the world sleep better. Okay. Sleep better so that they can live a better life, right? So in that mission, yeah, we know this is an impossible mission to help everybody sleep better in the world, but what it helps us do is reach out to more and more people and work with more and more people, people who think like us, people who want to be positive, people who want to make other people's lives better. So in that process, we always are looking for people who can be partners with us in doing that job. And it's global, so it's not limited to one place or the other. Like recently, I was looking for somebody who could translate and put subtitles on the videos I made on different subjects in sleep in different languages. So we have, for example, an intern these days working in our office who speaks Mandarin. He's a first generation immigrant. So he's helping create those subtitles in Mandarin. It's just, so it's the positivity of just working with each other and helping out. And so there is no job, no work that is small. Um, you feel you can do something in this whole process, feel free. The entire journey, the entire process, the entire work we do is not focused on making more money. Okay, it's focused on helping more people. That's the priority. It is a business, but the focus is helping more people. So in that process, and helping more people across cultures, across borders, across time zones, anywhere, whether it's in Africa or Europe or Asia or whatever language, we want to be there. We want to help them. So we have started our part of what we, people connections we have made already, people we know, friends we have, people we've connected with in some places, and we are making progress. But anybody's, we're happy to talk to any.
Sweet. An idea that might be useful to you guys is not only just subtitling them in different languages, but even having people who are in those languages dub over them. There's a couple of YouTubers that have been doing that, and it's English as a language is like 10% of the internet. There's like so much out there where if it's just in English, they won't even be able to touch by it.
Right, and it's so thanks to YouTube and other media, everything's available to most people around the world, and people are looking for the right information, and information that is credible, that's authentic, that is not out there to exploit them, in some sort of way negative. It's positive, trying to help them out. People are looking for it, and so I mean, we may not have an office in a country in a language that we have our videos in, but hey, if somebody listens to this and it helps them sleep better, that would be great for us. So I mean, I just gave you an example, but there's oftentimes lots of things that, depending on your listeners, and somebody says, hey, I think I could help, welcome. Just send us an email and talk to us, and we're happy to have a conversation.
And all the links to how to contact them will be in the show notes for everyone listening in. Thank you for joining us today with the Learn with Lowell show. Check us out at learnwithlowell.com. Anywhere podcasts can be found, subscribe. Tell me what you thought of this episode. Check us out on YouTube in particular. It's a new thing I'm doing. Timestamps and links are in the show notes. Thank you for coming, and I hope every one of you found something today that you're curious about to learn more about, and you'll go out and be curious and learn something new. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.